You're probably using settings in your Sony camera that make your videos look worse, and you don't even realize it. And today, I'm ranking the most common camera settings from pro level, which is going to be S tier, all the way down to fail or F tier. Some of these are essential, and some of them are a complete waste of time, and chances are you're using both. Let's see if your go-to settings survive the list. So here's how a setting makes it to S tier in my book. It has to give you repeatable, reliable, good-looking results every time. Because honestly, there's nothing more frustrating than getting a good-looking shot and not being able to repeat it. Let's kick it off with a setting that we're all familiar with, auto exposure. This is what the camera comes out of box in, and it's gonna make all of the exposure decisions for you, which is great, but if your goal is to consistently make your videos look good, this setting might hold you back. Because it's constantly assessing the scene, you might get some of this action even in an evenly lit scene. Auto mode's kind of a tough one to rank for me because at first glance, it's F tier for me. There's a S tier method coming up very soon for how to get exposure and use your camera in general, but it's F tier. But if you're first starting out with your camera, I actually think auto is S tier. So it's both. And the reason I say that is because when you're first starting out, auto is going to allow you to actually use your camera and not get frustrated by the hundreds of settings and what do I change and my images look bad, I might as well just use my phone. But yeah, if you're first starting out, auto is S tier. But at some point, you got to rip those training wheels off and get into some of the more complex options to maximize your camera. Speaking of some of those more scary options, let's talk about manual. This setting unlocks all of the other settings in the camera for manual adjustments and puts all of the decision making on you, which is good when you know what you're doing because this is how you maximize the full potential of your camera. And I found that with the right practice in the right direction, you can make your manual mode reflexes as fast as the camera's auto, which sounds crazy because auto is pretty much instant. Manual mode is an instant S tier for me because when you know how to use it, this is the epitome of getting repeatable, reliable results. The histogram, and I know I'm going to make some people upset on where I rank this one. The histogram is a display setting you can toggle on your camera. The left side represents the shadows, the middle for midtones, and the right side is for highlights. As you shoot, the graph fills up with data showing how much of your image falls into each area. The general rule of thumb is to make sure you're not clipping in the shadows or highlights. That usually shows up as big peaks pushed all the way to the right or the left. Now, if I wanted to expose my skin tone to 70, like this OG Ansel Adam exposure chart, the histogram wouldn't really give me an exact number to be able to do that. It's just a bit too general. I'm putting the histogram right here in the middle at the C tier for getting exposure. An S tier option, I promise you, is on the way, but the only reason why I don't rate this as straight up F tier is because a lot of smart, talented people out there swear by the histogram, so there has to be something to it. The meter and exposure compensation setting is one that we use for exposure. Set it to 0.0 if you want a neutral exposure, and you can get into the negative numbers if you want to underexpose it for some reason. And yep, you can go into the positive numbers if you want to overexpose. Seems simple enough. Set it to 0.0 for an evenly bright or evenly exposed scene, and you should be good, right? Nope. The issue with this setting is that it's using all of the highlights, midtones, and shadows in the frame left to right to gauge what 0.0 or 0.3 or whatever you have it set to is. Like right now, this looks fine, but if I increase the intensity of my backlight, that will factor into the left to right frame of what 0.0 is, and you can start to see the issue. The meter and exposure compensation in general is a solid B tier option for me on our list because as long as your subject is facing the main light source and you set it to 0.0, should get a decent result. Let's rank another exposure setting, zebra display. This is a feature that lets us choose a numerical value where we want the zebras to appear when anything in the frame hits that specific number. Back on the example from earlier where I'd want to expose my skin tone to 70 per our OG chart here, I just set the zebra value in camera to 70 and then increase the exposure or the lighting until zebras just start to appear on the brightest part of my face in this example, and that's it. Stop screenshotting my OG Ansel Adams exposure chart. I'll put a link for you to download it for free down below. If you've seen any of my YouTube videos, you know that I'm gonna put zebra for exposure, zebra settings for exposure instantly into S tier. It's fast, and it's way more precise than the other exposure methods that we looked at today. Shutter priority is a cool setting because if you care about motion blur in your videos, how you achieve that is you want to make sure that your shutter speed is twice the number of your frame rate. So if I was shooting in 30 frames a second, I'd want my shutter to be 1/60, 60 being twice or double 30. When you put your camera in S for shutter priority and then pop your ISO into auto, and then set your exposure compensation to 0.0, the camera's going to make all of the exposure decisions for you while maintaining a constant shutter speed. The shutter priority setting is going to comfortably find its way into A tier because it can be really useful for changing lighting situations. It's not quite S tier though, because you're not going to have full control over your aperture or your ISO, and you're going to have to rely on the exposure compensation method, which we've already talked about where the pros and cons are of that. Getting into some focus settings, let's talk about focus speeds, which focus speeds has two pillars to it. First is subject shift sensitivity, which is how responsive the autofocus is to shift to a new subject if one enters the focus area. And autofocus transition speed is how quickly the autofocus transitions once it decides to focus on a new subject. When you have these cranked up really high, which is how they come out of box, one little issue that can happen is you might get a little bit of pulsing on the edges of your frame. A good rule of thumb is just to match both of these speeds to what you're filming. As an example, the shot that y'all are looking at right now, I have these cranked all the way down. They're set way low, down to like 1 for both autofocus subject shift sensitivity and autofocus transition speed. Because this is an interview type of shot, talking head YouTube video, I'm not moving much. There's not much action. The focus is going to lock on and stick. But if I was filming a very fast moving subject, I'd put these all the way at the top. Focus speeds are a solid A tier setting for me because changing them can absolutely help you get more consistent results when you match the speed of your subject to the speed of your autofocus. But not changing them for how they come out of box probably isn't going to make or break your footage, which means it's not quite S tier. But breathing compensation is a setting that's coming in newer Sony cameras and maybe some firmware updates for some older ones. And it only works with Sony native lenses, but it's going to completely eliminate any of that potential focus breathing or pulsing that might happen on the edges of your frame. And breathing compensation is an absolute S tier setting. Focus area is next, and this setting tells the camera what part of the frame you want it to use to prioritize and get focus. In wide, it's using the entire frame. In zone, it'll only look for the subjects to focus on within this white box, and then you can get more precise with some of these spot and expand spot options. We're going to rank focus area in A tier, because changing it to something like zone for a shot like this can just help reduce the odds the camera is going to focus on the wrong thing on like the edges of the frame or something. It's not quite S tier though, because even leaving the camera in wide, how it comes out of box, the cameras do a pretty good job these days of getting the right thing in focus, so not quite S tier, but solid A. The creative looks setting are Sony's like standard baked in looks that give your image a variety of different tones, different colors. And for me, these are gonna hold you back from getting pro level results. This one's gonna have to find itself all the way down in F tier. How something looks is absolutely subjective, and there's probably some people out there who like some of these creative looks, but these are going to hold you back from developing your own style. Custom buttons is a feature where you can remap all of the buttons and dials to almost any setting in the camera that you want. Maybe you want your wheel to be set for ISO for quick adjustments, Or maybe you want the left press to be set to zebra levels, and boom, custom buttons. Automatic S tier, because Sony cameras don't really come out of box set up in the most efficient and effective way. Your Sony camera has well over 100 settings, but you really only need 15 to make your videos look pro. And if you're serious about not only learning what those 15 settings are, but also how to custom map them to your camera in a ridiculously efficient and effective way, you can check out this link, which I'm also going to put in the description. That link will take you to my Essential Sony Camera Settings micro course. It's only $27 right now, and the next 40 people are going to get some bonuses. I'll see you in there. White balance is the main culprit for how your colors and tones of your scene are going to look. Maybe you want them to look natural with a pure white, or maybe they need to be a little bit warmer during something like a sunset or a sunrise. Your camera is going to use auto white balance to make all of those decisions for you. The issue with that is that the camera is going to be constantly scanning to look for what's the proper white balance, which means that if the colors and tones slightly adjust or change, or sometimes even in a controlled environment it can do this, you might get some color or tone shifting in your shot. I've actually had my camera in auto white balance for this entire section, and here's how it looked just 30 seconds ago versus how it's looking right now. The only real benefit of auto is that it's fast. Kind of similar to auto exposure. I'm of the belief that with the right direction and the right practice, you can make your ability to understand and set manual white balance as quickly as the camera does auto, and you'll be a lot happier with your result. Another F tier setting here, unfortunately, for auto white balance, because it definitely is going to hold you back from consistent results. And I think a lot of people put way too much trust in the camera to get the white balance right in auto mode, which it just doesn't. But when it comes to white balance, maybe a setting that's not at the bottom is going to be something like manual white balance, which really shouldn't be as intimidating as it sounds. This is where we control the Kelvin value in the camera ourselves. Maybe we want the shot to be warm or a bit more blue, or maybe we want pure white. This setting is how we manipulate all of that. And if you do want pure white, you can take this little sensor cap that came with your camera, go to custom set on your white balance, move the target to be on the cap, which should be facing your light source, snap that, and boom, perfect white balance. Custom white balance is an absolute S-tier option. This is the definition of creating consistent, reliable results, and learning it is absolutely worth the learning curve. Do y'all agree or disagree with anything on the list so far? Let me know in the comments, because we got the most controversial one coming up next. Picture profiles. Think of picture profiles like baking a cake. With no profile, the camera's going to give you a cake that's already decorated, already frosted, looks good, and you can't change much. But with a profile like S-Log3, camera's just giving you the cake. It's up to you to put on the frosting, decorate it how you want to, a lot more flexibility in post. Picture profiles in Sony cameras change how your footage looks by adjusting things like color, contrast, and brightness inside the camera. They let you choose between more ready-to-go looks like S-Cinetone, as a punchy, vibrant style right out of camera, or flat, low-contrast looks like S-Log3 that are meant to be color-graded later for more flexibility in post. Your most common options: S-Log3, S-Cinetone, HLG. Picture profiles are landing in two places. Once again, if you know what you're doing, picture profiles are S-tier. For me, I almost exclusively record in S-Log3, but I wish somebody told me this sooner. Similar to auto, but when you're first starting out, this is an F-tier option. All the picture profiles, get rid of them. If you just nail the fundamentals of exposure and white balance with no picture profile, no added complexity, nail that, your footage is going to look far better than if you don't nail those things and try to dabble with picture profiles because you think you're supposed to get the best looking images. Once you nail those fundamentals, dive in, have some fun with all the picture profiles out there, and your long-term good-looking results will thank you, and your frustration levels will be pretty low. I think I'm supposed to tie that back into like cake somehow. I kind of forgot, but I don't know. Have a piece of cake while you do it. And if you want the ability to manually set your white balance and learn all the intricacies behind that and be able to set it really fast, you want to check out this guide where I give you my exact system for all that. Anyways, see you in the next video. Take care. See ya.